First and foremost, thanks for having me on. Hopefully this will go well, and then I can hopefully be a reoccurring guest, add some new insight.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure you guys have been studying the uh, Israel and Gaza war going on, and I'm sure that you've seen a lot of misinformation, propaganda surrounding the war. Um, the Russia-Ukraine war is no different. There's a lot of skewed media around this war, and hopefully I can clear some things up. So, just a quick background: the Russian-Ukraine war started off as a civil war in Ukraine between East and West. And what had happened was the eastern region, which is known as the Donbass, the Donetsk Basin, um, that region of eastern Ukraine had declared a secession. And they were basically trying to create an independent state, and Russia had backed them in 2014, and then they had given them financial and military support. Um, and Crimea, which is a part of the eastern region at the
Ah, that's
time, had decided that they wanted to join. They wanted to join Russia. They actually did. Um, One thing to keep in mind is that eastern region of Ukraine is a Russian speaking region. So it would be analogous to, Texas or New Mexico or California having a Mexican or Spanish speaking population. It's not like, these are isolated regions. There's a lot of history between these two regions. And there's a lot of cross nationality between these two regions. Um,
and sorry, really quick. I don't even know the answer to this, which is embarrassing. But what language does Ukraine speak?
they speak Ukrainian. So
That's okay.
technically, it is very similar to Russian, but there are differences to it. Kind of like you know United Kingdom English and American English. So it's very similar, but there are some differences. So I would say the first sort of major disinformation right off the bat was where Russia sort of invaded Crimea when technically it was an annexation, and Crimea had decided that they wanted to join Russia. Um, we can get into the details later, but just to kind of get the ball rolling,
So, but they
Crimea
did
wants
invade Crimea.
they did invade the western region, and I do think that that was wrong on their end. I didn't think that they needed necessarily to invade Ukraine, and Ukraine has every right to defend their sovereignty. But the first sort of misinformation was, um, you have to remember that, or you have to consider that Russia is not just some country, right? There's a lot of uh, historic tension with the United States, and we were pretty involved in Ukraine for a good part of 20 years, especially with the Biden family and with Obama, actually. But we basically we sort of ignited the civil war in Ukraine. We sort of started this, and then that's how Russia sort of got pulled into this. But Russia, when they invaded, they had a sort of, you know, grocery list of different things that they were upset with. And one of the reasons why they decided to do this was to quote unquote demilitarize and to denazify Ukraine. That was a huge reason for why they made this move. And in our media, they had said that, oh, there's no Nazis in Ukraine. This is ridiculous. This is just a ridiculous argument, and et cetera, et cetera. And what actually ended up happening was slowly information started to come out, and they go, well, okay, there is a little bit of a Nazi presence there, and then it turned into, well, there's a lot, but it's okay because they're our allies. So essentially, you have to look at what happened in, I believe, 2014 or 2013. So Ukraine was, um, they had a president who was President Yanukovych, and there was a bill, I believe, to his desk basically saying, look, you can sort of join an economic pact with the West or with the East, which would be Russia and China, that sort of union. And he was about to sign it to join the West. And at the last second, he backed off. Now, he's from the Donbass. He's born in the Eastern region. But a lot of these sort of, I believe they call it the Verkhana Rada, which is like their Congress, they were mostly pro-Western Ukraine, which, um, and so they basically did a coup. It was called the Euromaidan. They ousted the president, who was democratically elected. They ousted him and they took over the government. And the government, the new sort of takeover was led by um, neo Nazis, ultra nationalists, sort of ultra right wing coalition. Within that group, there were Nazis naturally. Um, one of which I can't remember. Tiani Bach, I think was his name, and he's taking pictures with McCain, and um, he was backed by the U.S. And they basically took over, and the Eastern region, and not only that, they changed the Constitution. So they ousted the democratically elected president, changed the Constitution unilaterally, and that was cause for the Eastern part to secede. And there was actually during that war, there was a neo-Nazi battalion militia called the Azov Battalion, and they actually got not only support from the Ukrainian government, but they actually got annexed basically into the Ukrainian government. So the Ukrainian government made them a part of the National Guard. They were officially a part of the Ukrainian military. They were absorbed into the military. So from Russia's standpoint, who had fought in uh, Nazis during World War II, they had seen the Ukrainian government as not only sort of Nazi sympathizers, but basically Nazi government because they had absorbed a Nazi group into the government. Not only that, the leadership was also had Nazi presence. And so that was their reasoning for denazifying. That was their argument. But
Yeah.
Western media denied it at first, rather than just owning up to the reality, saying and just being transparent, saying here's what's going on over there, and we're still going to support it because X, Y, and Z, rather than just call it false. There was another big story where Russia had accused the U.S. of basically doing bioweapons research in Ukraine, and this is where Obama comes in. So this is the interesting thing. So they denied it, right? Well, I believe it's a Washington Post article or New York Times from like 2005. It's all on there. Um, Obama, I believe, senator or representative at the time, he and another Republican senator or representative, they spearheaded an initiative basically to have the United States control biolabs in Ukraine. Because at the time, Ukraine was still somewhat of a new country. They didn't really have an infrastructure for that. But here's the interesting thing is rather than have like the NIH or some sort of, FDA or whoever control the biolabs in Ukraine, which had dangerous pathogens, um, we had the Department of Defense run those labs. And to this day, the the United States Department of Defense still runs and operates biolabs in Ukraine that have these high level pathogens that could be used as a bioweapon. So the question is, why is the US military running biolabs in Ukraine that have the potential to be bioweapons? Um, that was a story that was sort of shrugged off as like, conspiracy theory or whatever, but there's a legitimate reason there. Why is the US government doing this? Um, the other one, too, just the final point, is that um, Putin had also alluded to the idea that NATO was sort of encroaching. And they had sort of said, this war is not about NATO. NATO has nothing to do with this. But what you'll find is that at the time, the NATO Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, literally stated that, quote, Putin went to war to prevent NATO, more NATO close to his borders. Quote, he has gotten the exact opposite. So this is coming from the head of NATO saying that Putin's gone to war against NATO and he got the exact opposite. Um, so those were the big, for me, those were the big sort of
Got the
misinformation.
exact opposite of
He got
what?
more NATO expansion because
Okay.
during the war, I believe, might have been, it was one of the Scandinavian countries. They had joined NATO. So NATO actually got larger during that. Um, so I think that's good for now. Just any questions
Two,
or
yeah, two things. When you say there was a Nazi, so Eastern Ukraine, Crimea was in part of Eastern Ukraine or Western?
Crimea is in the eastern region.
Eastern region, okay. And the Nazis were involving in the eastern or western region of Ukraine?
They were in the western, kind of all over. They were in the western, but they were fighting in the east. There was training in
Okay.
the
And
east.
they were and how when you say Nazi, like modern day Nazis in Ukraine, what exactly established them as a Nazi group?
So technically, if you go by sort of National Socialists, they were National Socialist group. So they believed in sort of uh, they were Ukrainian nationalists, but they were um, I believe there was a sort of racial aspect to that as well. A lot of
Okay, when
them
you
had
mean
fought.
when you mean National Socialism, that does that mean kind of like an extreme globalized idea of fascism?
I would say so. Yes, they.
Mhm.
I don't. As far as I can tell, there's not really this level of sort of anti-Semitism, but they're sort of quasi-Nazi. They have this sort of racial nationalist view. Um, they also had, if I can find in my notes, um, let's see here. They had Nazi patches. There was a guy, Stephen Bandera, who was. So this is where the history gets complex. Is you had Germany at the time had gotten to Ukraine, and the people there. This is basically the way that sort of our media presents it is, which I think there's some truth to this. They either had a choice: you either fight with the communists or you fight with the Nazis, and the people there did not want to fight with the communists, so they sided with the Nazis.
Well, of course
They
not.
weren't
I mean,
necessarily
Stalin killed like what 10, 20 million Ukrainians prior to World War II.
exactly, exactly. Vladimir, right?
Yeah.
So they weren't necessarily Nazi per se, but they had fought as Nazis. And so
Yeah.
here in the US, that's a big deal. Like why would you not be transparent, right? Like they would not want to make that. They were so afraid of that. It's like just be honest and say, hey, this is what the culture is, this is what the people have. just support it. Like, just this is who we're supporting because X, Y, and Z. But they denied it completely rather than just say, hey, here's the reality of the situation, you know?
What did they say instead? Like, what was their
This
like?
guy.
What was their cover? Because I'm gonna I don't know if this is like I'm gonna take you at your word on this. What was their cover though in what they would say?
I
Like,
looked at. I was fat.
because I've
Yeah, I
heard a
was. I
thousand
was.
times. I mean, they used to call. Remember when they used to call Trump supporters Nazis originally? Like right in the beginning.
It's the
Yeah.
same. Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's like,
It's a hot
hey,
button
just
term
be
to like
honest.
completely condemn an entire group of individuals. So it's
100%.
like
100%. So they basically said there's a famous New York Times article where they said it's complicated. It's complicated, you know. Oh, it's not what you think. Here's why. And they sort of tried to like, wiggle around it rather than just saying, hey, the Ukrainian government was supporting Nazi groups. We're still going to support them anyways because X, Y, and Z. They could have easily said that. There's no difference. It's like, um, hey, we're going to back these jihadist groups in the Middle East to fight whoever, rather than just deny that they're jihad at all. Like, just be honest and say, hey, this is the group. Maybe we don't see eye to eye with them ideologically, but this is what we're doing with their money. They
Yeah.
should at least
Maybe
be
their leader's
transparent.
gonna. Yeah. Maybe their leader's gonna do 9/11 20 years later, right? But
Maybe they will.
well, I mean, that's
So
what happened. I
it's just
mean,
it's the
yeah.
hypocrisy, though. It's like
Oh yeah.
it's the same thing that Thomas had brought up. Is they sort of characterize MAGA movement as a Nazi movement and try to relate Trump with Hitler. And here you go, Democrats giving tax dollars to a government which not only is sympathetic towards Nazis, but actually celebrates Nazis. This was another one.
is that tied specifically
Well,
to the
Zelensky.
Israel.
Democrats though? Like I feel like on both ends of the spectrum, isn't that like
Oh,
a,
Both,
a uniparty thing of like support to Ukraine for some reason? Even with President
I
Trump, didn't
think
he just
both.
send them a bunch of weapons?
yeah.
Yes, this is a sort of um, uniparty moment, but I think that there was a lot of Republican disagreement with funding and how much funding. I think that you saw a lot of Democrats were
But
usually
I
the
feel like that was
loudest.
because I feel like that was because Biden, the president who was doing it, was a Democrat.
Yes. So either you and your viewers, you can look at this after, but there's an article by Reuters, March 2018, titled Commentary Ukraine's Neo-Nazi Problem. So they definitely were not shy about going into depth on certain activities over there. There's another article by NBC News.
You want to plug that in the chat real
Um,
quick? Maybe we could look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm doing that right. No, I got it.
All right, perfect.
Um, all right,
Um,
send.
Okay. I see. Boom.
So one sec. So when you say Crimea wanted to be a part of Russia, is that the people or the government of Crimea? Well, there's no government of Crimea because it was part of Ukraine, correct?
um, so during the Soviet Union, Crimea was categorized as a autonomous republic or autonomous region. So they did have their own government,
Okay.
um, and they were a part of Ukraine, but they really wanted they sort of were used to this high level of autonomy, and they had basically decided that they wanted to join Russia. So what had happened is you had this coup in Ukraine, which was sort of backed by the United States. There's a famous phone call by Jeffrey Piat and Victoria Nolan, who were working with the U.S. One of them, I think, was an ambassador to Ukraine. One of them was a state, whatever, working in the federal government.
Hold on.
And
Okay. I just want to
yes,
jump in real quick because I believe I might have come to the conclusion, and tell me if I'm on the right track here, based on everything that you've said so far. Because I'm a person from the outside, I want to see if my audience can come to this conclusion, or our audience can come to this conclusion as well. Ukraine was a sovereign state that was kind of had a lot of volatility in its political spectrum, making it a very good target to be able to get very close to Russia. So they were ploying multiple different ways in order to gain control over the state so that way they could have a closer tie and, like, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. They wanted to be right up on Russia's border, and they were willing to do anything necessary to get up as close as they could to them. So first it was with this thing that you're just talking about now, where there was a potential coup, which is why it was backed by the United States. Then you had the previous NATO person that was saying that they were going to bring Ukraine into NATO, so they gave it that front. That's why they had the biolabs in there. They gave them the incentive so that we could further improve the ties. So no matter what way we're looking at this, it's to take control of Ukraine as another vassal state on behalf of the United States and bully them into submission and just take
100%,
control.
100%.
Okay.
And I'll even add this to that. This is a an interesting. This is an interesting thing that I sort of found on my own. But let me see when this article was. This is from the IEA, which I think is the International Energy Association or something like that.
Of the
So
IEA.
yeah. So get this. I believe it's in around 2010 or 2011. They were they discovered proven natural gas reserves in, you guessed it, Crimea and Donbass. So there were major natural gas reserves found in that region in eastern Ukraine. This is before the sort of conflict. Then, um, in on there's an article.
And what does that
Uh,
mean? Natural gas reserves.
Basically, there's a whole bunch of natural gas there. So it's kind of like we go to war for oil, in the Middle East. There's a bunch of natural gas in Ukraine. Um, so naturally, this is crazy. The Ukrainian government, um, on January 24th, 2013, the actual Ukrainian government signed gas contracts with BP Shell, Chevron, and Exxon and Mobil. These were 50-year agreements. So now you have American and United Kingdom, but basically you have Western natural gas energy interests signing deals with the government of Ukraine for 50 years to take gas out of the east and send it west. That is a big deal for Russia because that is how Russia's economy operates. Russia's they have been um, sort of labeled as Europe's gas station. That is the lifeblood of Russia, is not only energy, but energy to Europe. So now, basically, the United States would cut them off by having energy coming from Ukraine into Europe. So this is not only a national security issue from an economic standpoint for Russia, but also having U.S. interests right on your border and making money off of it. So,
So, but when they cut them off, that was a massive like economic disparity that then occurred for all European nations, right? Wasn't that a big confliction of, like, everyone was like, "What the fuck are we doing this to our supposed allies for?" Right?
of course, yes. And what do you know? A year later, 1 year later, Ukraine is going to join this sort of economic union with Europe. And oh, what do you know? The US is going to be doing the gas there. And then the president backs out. And there were claims that he was basically, Russia sort of told him like to back out last minute. They sort of got a hold of him. Whatever the case is, that's what happened. And then there was a civil war, basically, in Ukraine. There was a coup led by the US, um, a leaked phone call by, as I was saying, Victoria Nolan and Jeffrey Piat, who were State Department people that were working in Ukraine, and they basically said, you could read the transcript. They had said that we want, this is our guy. We want this. No, that guy's too weak. They were basically just saying which leaders they want to run Ukraine. There's also photographs of John McCain with a guy named Tianibok, who is he's an actual Nazi. He actually is a Nazi. So he did say he is. And again, it's the hypocrisy.
When you say a
Why
Nazi,
do you
was
have
this
John?
guy now against these people that are currently trying to take control of Ukraine? Like I'm talking about us, like 'cause you know how we're trying to enact our own supremacy over Ukraine at that point, but like not indiscriminately, as if it like make it not look like we are, even though we are. But like, is this Nazi against this or for this?
He's for this. Because he's getting U.S. support.
Okay.
They're very happy to get U.S. support. So we're it's like on their end, they're like, hey, look at the U.S. They're supporting our movement, right? And here over here, we're like, oh, it's not happening, but it is. We just can't be honest with our own people on where we're spending our money. That's really, I think, what we should be is just be honest, be transparent with what we're doing with tax dollars. So we had the Civil War.
Who does this benefit? I'm confused. I'm so lost with who is
Yeah,
this benefiting now? Is that a good question, Charlie, or am I retarded? I mean,
No, you're not.
this whole fucking thing
I
is like
mean,
so out there. It's like, wait, all right.
clearly it benefits.
Big companies,
Clearly
the
it
big
benefits.
corporations like Shell and fucking what was the other one?
ExxonMobil
Yeah.
and Chevron.
Just like in all the other states, like
And
in
they
Iraq and in fucking what was the other one? Was it Libya that they're where they just take over the place, kill
Dude, I mean,
everyone, and then put corporations in there?
yeah, it's a lot more than two of those, buddy. I mean, I can come up with, I mean, Liberia, Angola, Libya, Iraq, Iran, um, Cuba, fucking, Guatemala. I mean, dude, I could go on for.
But they hate
But
us for
anyways,
our
continue.
freedom. Okay, yeah, that's right. They hate us because of our freedom.
this is great too. There's an article by CBS on January 23rd, 2014, says enraged protesters storm Ukraine government offices. What happened was you had this coalition of rioters, which were actual insurrectionists. This sort of right-wing coalition had taken over, stormed the Capitol and took over the government. And so anyway, that's just funny that that's out there. But basically, they took over, and then there was a shelling campaign. So they had actually bombed eastern Ukraine, and this was sort of the catalyst for Russia getting involved. Russia was not involved really at that point. I'm sure that they had, spies or whatever, but there was no sort of military involvement. Um, Ukraine, the Ukrainian government, because the eastern region, they wanted to separate. They wanted to secede. They didn't even want to be a part of sort of Russia. They just wanted their own freedom at that point. And so
Mhm.
they had separated, they had fought back, and then the Ukrainian government used the government. Think about this: the government bombed its own people. Like they actually used military grade. This wasn't like tear gas, whatever. No, bombs. They actually
Where?
shelled the
Oh,
Donbass,
oh, that's what you meant
and
by shelled.
yes, that they actually used weapons against civilians in the eastern region. It's so crazy.
And
War
those
on
And
people
Donbass,
they were the ones that
2000.
initially started calling for help to Russia, right? Weren't they like calling for the help of
yes,
Russia? Like we're
100%.
literally willing to go back a part of you if you just fucking help us, right?
That's exactly what happened. And the thing is too, it's not just there's they have family in Russia. They speak Russian. There's the history there. You have to remember this would be like, if the US was like bombing New Mexico and you have a predominantly Hispanic population in New Mexico and they sort of say, "Hey Mexico, we need your help. We've got family back home. We speak your language." There's a lot of sort of uh like I said, cross nationality between the two. And so that was the catalyst for Russia just getting involved. they didn't actually send troops there. They were just sort of giving money, giving weapons, and they had annexed Crimea. The government of Crimea had voted. They did want to join Russia. And ever since they've been apart
Yeah.
for the last 10 years or so.
So when
And then it,
when Russia invaded Crimea, they were fighting against the post 2000 the post Viktor Yana.
yeah,
They
the new
were
sort of,
fighting against the new Ukrainian government, right?
yes. And it's funny because there's a lot of sort of pro Zelensky here in the US. And ironically, when they changed the constitution, the new government, what they did was they actually took powers away from the president and put more power into the Congress. So Zelensky sort of is this like figurehead. He's not really, he actually has less
Oh yeah,
power than what president used to have before. So it's funny to see
makes
how
sense.
he's sort of like leading the charge when he has less power than before. Also, Zelensky gave a standing ovation to an actual World War II Nazi alongside Justin Trudeau.
I
This
bet.
was, I believe, last year or two
Dude,
years
I
ago. I
remember
don't know
that
if you guys
shit.
saw
No,
that.
no, no, I know exactly what you're talking about because they had to like come out with this
Yeah.
whole fucking statement. They're like, "We're sorry," because he was like, literally, he like somehow managed to dodge the entire fucking what was it? The
Yeah.
What trials were they? Nuremberg trials. He like somehow managed to
Yes.
surpass it, and like then he was getting a standing ovation after being a literal
Funny how our
Nazi.
allies it's funny how our allies like support Nazis. I mean, um Netanyahu served in the cabinet of a pro-Nazi prime minister. I don't know if you guys,
Wow.
Yitzhak Shamir.
Wow. Oh, yes, I did hear about
All right,
this.
and just
Yitzhak
so
Shamir was a co-founder of the Leahy who supported the Nazis in 1941 on the co-interest of
But this
of expelling the British and British Mandate Palestine.
here's here's a I think this is a sort of this sort of sums up Western media on this issue of the Nazi issue in Ukraine. This is from NBC News, March 5th, 2022. The headline is Ukraine's Nazi problem is real, even if Putin's denazification claim isn't. So they're literally saying, hey, he's right, but they're also saying, but he's still wrong because whatever reason, like they just contradicted themselves in their own title of the article. Hey, there is a huge Nazi presence in Ukraine, especially in
Yeah,
the government,
wait.
but at the same time,
I have
his
a
denazification claims.
because here's my thing
Even
on the whole.
the logo, I'm looking at the logo right now. It kind of almost looks like a half swastika.
When we say Nazi
Like,
though,
am
like,
I?
'cause I just want to make sure we got this. Like when we're saying Nazi, because I feel like if you're a Nazi, what the fuck would you want to have? Like, because you were saying before how like this Nazi supported U.S. involvement in this part of it. And I'm like
Right,
I'm getting confused because maybe I just have my definition wrong of what a Nazi is in this case. Because like when I think of a Nazi, I think of someone who wants to be like they're a nationalist, right? They're a nationalist at core. They don't like
right,
globalization. They like to have national sovereignty. They want to be their own people. And like
right.
so how does because I'm trying to figure out like what are these really like is it that type of a Nazi or is this a completely different
So,
variation that people are used to under like cuz I'm just trying to put it together that one part of it. That was just one thing that just stuck out to me.
so one of the things that I've seen is there's it's majority ultra nationalist. So it's an ultra nationalist coalition. Of that group, there was a minority that genuinely were uh, Hitler style Nazis
Like
that
they just like
actually
Germany's they like Germany. They put up the fucking Sieg Heil. They
they were sort of, yes,
yeah.
they were sort of Hitlerist, right? That was sort of their view. Um, but the sort of ultra right, like ultra nationalist group was also sort of sympathetic towards Nazis. So the media sort of categorize them as a whole as sort of Nazi or neo-Nazi,
Hmm.
when in reality it was a small minority that were Nazi. Most of them are gone now. It's really just this sort of ultra right wing, ultra nationalist, whatever you want to call it, movement. But they still use Nazi symbols, and they do celebrate. There's a guy, Stefan Bandera, who had fought in World War II. He had actually fought with the Nazis. So if we remember, Ukraine was annexed by Nazi Germany. They were the Reichskommissariat of Ukraine. They were actually a part of the Reich, and one of the sort of celebrated war heroes was a guy, Stepan Bandera, and he's a sort of war hero in Ukraine, which, and to them, he's a war hero. He's sort of their Washington.
Is this the guy?
But
I got a quick description of him. Involved in nationalist organizations from a young age. He joins Ukrainian military organization in 1924. In 1931, he became the head of the propaganda organization of Ukrainian nationalists and later became the OUN for Poland in 1932. Organized the assassination of the Polish uh, Interior Minister Bronzy, I can't even pronounce that name, and was sentenced to death after being convicted of terrorism and subsequently commuted to life imprisonment. Is this the guy?
They
Bandera,
killed him
yeah.
via cyanide gas by a KGB agent in Munich, so Germany.
Wait a minute. What time period was this? When did it? What year was that?
1959.
Okay.
1959. So well after World War II.
All
But
right.
as recently as I want to say in the last 10 years or so, he was sort of given this sort of posthumous, you know, sort of their like Medal of Freedom basically in Ukraine. So at the very least, I wouldn't categorize the Ukrainian government as a sort of Nazi government. But at the very least, they're sympathetic towards Nazis. They won't sort of distance themselves from Nazis, which
I have a question.
that's their history.
I have another
It's a
question
Yeah,
because
hypocrisy,
I'm
yeah.
just really trying to figure this out here. Because I mean, again, we're looking at another country. So the current power structure, like the power structure inside of Ukraine that's currently running the show, are these the Nazis or is it the people themselves that have this Nazi
it's
ideology?
the power structure. The power structure.
Okay.
The people in charge. Yeah, and they were basically put in there by the U.S. government. We helped support their revolution.
So I have another question
I
then.
looked at a lot of. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Because I notice this often, which is like such a weird, like like I don't know if you know who Tim Dillon is. He talks about like it's such a you have to have a special kind of person who is like a therapist simultaneously is also a supporter of Israel bombing children. Deep breath in,
Right.
let's kill all the children. Like it's a weird fucking predicament. So, but I also see this a lot of the time with people that are in favor of Israel. They say like that it's not a genocide, fuck the children, fuck Palestinians, they're all going, fuck them all, the Arabs should all die. Simultaneously, they look over at Ukraine, like there's actually
Yeah.
Ukrainian people who are investigating war crimes on behalf of Ukraine. So like you have all of these Israelis in the Israeli government who are simultaneously supporting Ukraine, but in what you're saying is like, but they're Nazis. Why is the like who like these Nazis who are don't favor Jews or at least sympathetic to like what the Germans did? How does that
Right.
how does that work?
Well, Zionism has never been against the Nazi Germany movement. They only use it for clout and PR. But
So it's again, it's like the same way that liberals like to make everything an emotional argument to tie in a bunch of people to a movement based on completely.
liberals and Republicans,
Yeah, yeah.
liberals, Democrats, yeah.
They're gonna
When I
take
hear
your
liberal, I
guns.
don't think Democrats. When I hear liberal, I don't think Democrat. I think Democrat Republican because
They're both the same
the
token.
neo the neocons
We
the
haven't gone
neo
right in like
neocons were
fucking
founded
100 years. Yeah.
neocons were
Right.
founded by the liberal movement in the 60s by Irving Kristol. So when I hear liberal, I don't think Democrat. I think Democrats, Republicans, that entire, I
Hmm.
mean, but was I gonna get it? Oh, yeah, I did some looking up and I did see some third-party articles that talked about in brief detail about the U.S.'s involvement in Ukraine. But a lot of the articles kind of didn't deny it, but just said that it wasn't supported by facts. Is that um
That's their way of basically saying it's kind of like there would always be, I'm sure you guys have seen Trump would make a statement and they would like dissect it like, no, that's incorrect, whatever. And then you really look at it, it's like, well, it's taken out of
I'm
context. They're
reading
like,
it.
that's
I'm reading it
you're
right
really
now, and it
splitting hairs
says it's
here.
they're dissecting it. They're not they're every article I've read that said that it's disinformation, or whatever is they're like dissecting it and they're saying, yeah, I mean, they're pretty much kind of almost admitting it, just not in the headline.
It's the thing is like Trump will make a statement and they say, oh, it's wrong. They'll give you a whole 500-page, thing on it. And then, you see Biden say something wrong and you go, okay, fact check him. And they go, well, it's taken out of context or, it's unsupported or they don't, they're not willing to just say that's wrong. So with the thing with Putin's claim that there's a neo-Nazi sympathetic government in Ukraine, and rather than the media saying yes, there is, but we're still going to support them because X, Y, and Z, they just sort of denied it, labeled it misinformation, and then more facts came out, and so now they won't deny it, but they won't accept it either. There's sort of just this like middle ground of like this sort of ambiguity on where they stand on that.
Yeah.
And
And
I think for me, that's the biggest issue is not being
and them
transparent.
the United States, well, it never have been. The United States giving them supposedly chemical weapons back in 2022, or no, before that, I think. Um it reminds me a lot of the Gulf War between Iraq and Iran, where the Reagan administration, who was addicted to starting wars all over the world, um gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons. And then 20 years later, we go to war with them for supposedly still having the weapons that we gave them. And 75% of the country ate the lie up.
This is the crazy part is, according to Zelensky, of the sort of $177 billion that we've given to them, they only received 75 billion. So they didn't even receive half the money that we gave them. So where is our tax money? You know,
Do you think he's telling the
Is
truth about
that, are you
that?
saying only set, like when you say that, do you mean like only 77 billion has been tracked? Or
yeah,
you mean like
they
they've only received 77 billion of the 177 billion?
Z- Zelensky's on record saying that they've only received 75 billion of that. He says, I don't know, we can't find the other $100 billion that you guys have given us. We never made its way to Ukraine. So
Do you think he's telling the
he
truth
sort of
about
alluded
that, though?
he sort of alluded to the idea that a lot of the money went to US military corporations who were supposed to send resources to Ukraine, but they sort of never got it. So the money just sort of stayed with Boeing and Lockheed Martin, and
I wonder if they
we
bought
basically gave
U.S. Treasury notes. You know how they do that with like how Israel does that? Like they, like the way that our government gives like Israel like its money, we give it as a loan, then we forgive the loan so that way we don't have to track the fucking their spending. And then they go and
Well, yeah.
they buy our treasury notes so that way they can earn interest on our own currency, which is
right.
fucking
And you know why?
insane.
The reason why Lockheed Martin is in the last few years seemingly gotten so much more powerful, guys, is because they partnered with Palantir. They collaborated
Right.
to partner something called a Apollo platform, which is accelerated software delivery. So they're kind
Right.
of running this power and control through Lockheed Martin. That's why Lockheed Martin in the last few years they've gotten so much more powerful. It's because of Palantir.
And the sort of, I think he was a founder, a Palantir, but definitely a financial supporter of, I'm sure you guys are aware, is Peter Thiel.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
he's
he's a founder.
big buddy with Vance. And
Yeah,
Peter Thiel also did PayPal with Elon Musk. So
PayPal Mafia.
sort of
Yep.
got his group in power.
Like he was big, and you know who donated over $100 million to him, or at least owned well over $100 million in stock in his Velar Venture company, which JD Vance worked at, is Jeffrey Epstein. If you guys knew about that. So
Oh yes,
Epstein and Peter Thiel were big time associates in business.
yes, I did remember. I did. You're right. I did remember reading that. This is
And
interesting.
then
So this is the sort of Biden connection. So this is just crazy. So Hunter Biden, let's see, I have it in my notes. He basically, Hunter Biden has his company Rosemont Seneca. It's like a venture firm. They invest. They basically Hunter Biden somehow got on the board Ukraine's number one natural gas company called Burisma in eastern Ukraine. So
well, he
not
had
only
something to
his,
offer them, I bet. You know, a little.
of course, through his dad. Yeah.
Well,
So so you have corporate you again, Biden is the vice president at the time. So you have the US government, basically the Ukrainian government and US corporation or energy corporations signing deals, and then you have the vice president's son on the board of a major Ukrainian natural gas company right there in eastern Ukraine. Um, what's he doing there? You know, how did he get on the board? Um, and this is great. So Burisma is headed, can't remember his name, but he's headed by sort of oligarch, right? He was in
mhm.
government. Now he was like the head of the Department of Gas or whatever, energy head secretary, and now he's head of Burisma. So you had the Attorney General of Ukraine, Viktor Shogun, investigating uh, Burisma for corruption charges, tax violations. And so basically, you have the Ukrainian government top prosecutor is investing Burisma for corruption. Joe Biden basically gets on the phone with, I can't remember who, but he gets on the phone with the Ukrainian government, says, if you don't fire the prosecutor,
This was a
you're not
famous
getting the
line.
money.
Yeah.
And he admits on transcript, on record, a quid pro quo, which is exactly what they used to impeach Trump. So he's saying, hey, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the money. Whoop-de-doo, the prosecutor gets fired and they get the funding. And by the way, this is US taxpayer money, so you can't just like, it's already been allocated towards Ukraine. You can't just deny it. So
It was
again,
$1 billion, right? It was like, or else you're not getting the $1 billion. Or was it a billion or a
yeah,
million? I forget.
it was billions, I believe. Yeah,
It was
it was a lot.
because he said you're not getting. He was like, because he was like, well, we already went into this thing, and then Joe Biden was like, he was like, you like put that fucking stipulation right then and there and said it to him, and he's like, well, what do you know? Prosecutor was
Yeah,
fired. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so think about that. Like the United States vice president pressures Ukraine to fire their attorney general who's investigating the company that very US vice president's son is on the board of. Like
Yeah.
if this was the Trump family, he would be publicly hung. Like this would be, you would see this plastered all over the media. But
At the
because
time,
Joe
yeah, but
Biden,
I feel like the media has been more pro-Trump than pro-Biden in the last couple of years, and I feel like behind the
Mhm.
scenes that's because, like, because I mean, It depends. I mean, it
I feel like
depends
Trump got
on.
bought out very recently. I feel like this is a switch.
No, he's been bought out. It's just I think he got more bought out
You, I,
within the last 4 or 5 years.
do you don't feel like in his first his first presidential run, it was a very, I mean, look, at the time, it was a
It
very
was
good
different.
excuse. I just feel like during that run, he was just completely unaware of the power structure and how things went, put people in positions of
No,
power who were supposed to guide him through it and just got completely railroaded. Maybe that's, I mean, that's probably at this point now, looking at how this presidency is running, I look back and I would say that point of view is naive. He was bought then too. It's
yeah,
just,
yeah,
he doesn't have, because at the time he didn't, he was going to be running for re-election, right? He doesn't have to run for re-election this time. So he can really basically do
exactly.
whatever the fuck he wants. What we thought this time was that, like, oh, he doesn't have to run for re-election. We're going to get the President Trump that we initially, had voted for the first time. But it's just like a complete 180, it seems like. But
Mhm.
again, yeah, no, I do feel like because I feel like
Worst.
the media still shits on Trump, but it's over the bullshit that no one actually cares about. That can be, I feel like the media purposefully like gives him softball criticisms so that Republicans or like people on the right can defend and back up with evidence, ignoring the actual thing, so that way there can still be a fight between the right and the left, and people are left in the dark, not realizing the bigger picture, like Brody's pointing out right now. Instead of, you know, I don't know if that makes sense,
Absolutely.
but
This benefits Russia, right? Maybe a little of an unintended consequence by the United States and Ukraine.
Yes, 100%. It's basically exposed the weakness of sort of monetary warfare, if you will, by the US. It's also strengthened Russia's ties with its allies. Um, this is another weird one. It's actually sort of brought India closer to Russia, and India, we're trying to get on board with India because
Is that why Trump
there's,
threatened?
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're trying to basically get out of China, but we're not going to bring stuff back to the US. We're just not. So we're going to move our production out of China into India. That's sort of the master plan here. But
no wonder they love
India
the
is sort of
H-1B so much. Fuck, man.
Hmm. I saw Vivek Ramaswamy was trying to get more of them on
so
board.
Can I just state for the record, I
yeah.
hate Indian
So
people for the most part. I know a couple. I know a couple good apples, but I can't stand them either.
oh my
Fuck, man. They listen. I do marketing. Like I do marketing. This is like my main source of income. I deal with them all the time. Fucking hate them. Okay. Just want to put that out there. So, all right, let's continue.
Dude, they're gonna see this.
Well, I don't want their money anyway.
oh
They're fucking. What do they got over there? The
geez.
Shidindu currency. What is it?
uh
Man.
All right.
yeah, and India was also buying a lot of Russian oil too.
Yeah.
So that's another big
Yeah.
one. But all in all, Russia's sort of alliance has strengthened, and I think it's also exposed the weakness of the U.S. There's war on currency, how effective sanctions are, um, and also, I mean, Russia's gotten a lot of ground. We've given them a lot of money to Ukraine, and Russia really seems to be coming out on top. So it sort of shows how, despite having the vice president's son on the board and all this money and revolution and all that, you sort of look weak. Um, so I think that sort of unintended consequence, like what Charlie said, is that Russia's sort of coming out as a winner on this.
Yeah.
All right. Now here I gotta. This might be. Charlie, you got any other? You have another question before I ask this one because this might be a big. Okay.
Oh, you're good.
Based on everything, Brody, that you've studied in all of this, right? You've seen everything they've done wrong. You've seen everything they've done right. Now, as much as I would like to talk about a morality standpoint between Russia and Ukraine, it's honestly, for me personally, not that big of a concern to me. Not because I'm not a human and I don't have empathy for those people, but at its core, I'm an American and I'm going to put my nation and my values over the people of other countries. So based on your like all of your studying of this topic and all of the research that you've done, what would you say is the solution, or what would you say the steps should be that the United States takes that would actually benefit us as Americans?
Get out.
Get out
Get
completely.
out. Don't. I had said from the start, we should have never even gotten involved on day one. We should have never supported Ukraine at all. Should have never been involved in Ukraine from the get go. That's not our
And
conflict.
yeah,
It's not our. It, like, if you really dig
yeah.
into it, it's sort of an ethnic conflict between Ukrainians and Russians. It's like, what are we doing? Why do we care so much about Crimea and Donbass? And granted, there is a larger sort of, the big picture is, this is why we're involved in this. One is to check Russia's economy. That's one reason. Another reason is for American energy interests. That's another reason. But the other one that I haven't seen anyone talk about, which is the China factor. China had signed an agreement with Russia to start doing trade through the Arctic Circle. And this has really put sort of the Arctic in play. This is why Trump wanted to get Greenland so bad, because if you look at the Arctic Circle, Greenland is right there. So there's an arms race through the Arctic, and no one seems to be talking about it. China has already built ports in Russia along the Arctic Circle, and Russia has begun building railroads from the top all the way down to Crimea. And if Russia can control the Black Sea, then they can sort of broker China's trade into Europe through the Black Sea, and they won't have to sort of go around and come through Egypt, Israel. So there's a really big push for China to open up a new trade route coming over the top and through Russia, and it cuts the transport in half. What would take 40 days takes only 20 days. And they don't have to go through India, and they don't have to go through the Middle East.
Is this why
They have to
Israel is
pass.
simultaneously trying to get in bed with China right now?
I think you're on the right track. This agreement, if you really think about it, this is sort of pulling everything together geopolitically. It's you start to see the pieces move towards this. This is why you had, I believe it was Norway or Sweden or one of those countries, join NATO after Russia had invaded Ukraine. China had built, I believe in Norway, they had built a port there. So China is trying to build ports in Scandinavia, and they're trying to do trade from over the top. But if they can get into the Black Sea, which, by the way, is a warm water port, which is, believe it or not, it's a big deal. If you're trying to do trade in the winter, you can't do trade in the Arctic. You can't do trade coming in through the UK. But if you have a warm water port like in Crimea or in the Black Sea, you can do trade year round. And China and Russia have already agreed to this. They were public about this. This was like several years ago. And they're working to get this trade moving. That's also why I think the US is in large part allies with Turkey, because Turkey, Istanbul, is sort of the entrance into Europe coming from the Black Sea. Even though Turkey is like ideologically the opposite of the US, we have to sort of go with them because we need to make them our friend and not have them become China or Russia's friend, because then that's a problem. Basically, China is trying to do trade into Europe through the Black Sea, which means Crimea and Eastern Ukraine. This is also the reason why, getting into the whole thing, Georgia, they had a similar situation, like their sort of Crimea, which is called Abkhazia, their sort of breakaway region. Russia has, quote unquote, peace troops there, whatever, but they have military there. And now there's also rumors that in Moldova, which is sort of South Ukraine, still along the Black Sea, that there's a region that would also like to join Russia. So from Russia's standpoint, you could see them sort of carving out US or Western influence in the Black Sea, and basically to open the way for China's trade. I think personally that this is sort of guiding a lot of the sort of Russian, it puts Russia back into play.